on here. Um, all right, guys, welcome to Under the Dome after the aborted episode 2 weeks ago, which I still don't know what's going on because I had a feed running on this monitor. And when I went and checked it, only 8.5 minutes of the show actually broadcast. And then last week I got put in a blue tent because a week ago tonight I was in the emergency room at Oxnard Hospital, being a very bad patient. Broke my right arm. First bone I've broken. First surgery I've had probably in a good 30, 40 years. Um, yeah, it was not fun. Um, I had surgery on Friday, and I'm gonna have a scar that runs from the bottom half of about the middle of my shoulder up here, all the way down to my forearm, because I broke my humerus bone, which is your bone between your bicep and your tricep. Um, Mardi Gras Day, I didn't do anything exciting. All I was doing was doing some yard work, try to make a decision. I said, okay, am I going to cut the grass or am I going to go to my shed, which is a big exterior, a big building. Okay. It's about, considering with the 4 foot little steps it sits on, it's probably a good 12 feet up in the air. So I brought my ladder over there. So I'm going to go clean off these branches that are coming from this big old oak tree that's right next to it, and I'll just sweep those things off with the rake. Get on the ladder, sweep those things off with the rake. And I've done this dozens of times. I kid you not. I've done this before. No problems. This time, I'm pushing the things off with my right hand, and I'm pushing it towards the edge of the roof. So I'm not extending myself. I'm not stupid. But I'm just using the rake just to get these things out the way. And I need to set this up because I was telling Sean this off the air. Um, I've got like 100-year-old oak tree right next to it, and that's what's dumping these dead branches onto this roof. And I also have there's two entrances to this shed. One's a garage door, regular size garage door, and the other is like a regular back door. You get in front of the back door is about a 2 foot high by about 4 foot wide hunk of concrete slab just sitting there in the dirt. And then next to it is a set of steps that you lead into through the garage door. And that's how I get my lawnmower and that kind of stuff out of it. Anyway, so I got my ladder between those two things, and I'm being careful. It's an old wooden ladder I've had for 20, 25 years. And I'm getting up there, and I knock some of it off. And then at one point, I feel the ladder kind of shake. So I pull the rake back and I start to climb down, but the ladder's solid where I'm at. So I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little too far, extending my arm too far. I'll just stay and climb back up 2 more steps. I'm not on the second highest step. I'm not on the top step, about 4.5 feet up in the air. And I start pushing the branch, towards the edge, and I'm not overextending myself. I'm letting the rake slide my fingers. So the rake is not, I'm not leaning forward or anything like that. I'm keeping my weight steady. And I'm guessing, based on what the kids told me when they tried to pick the ladder up, the ladder must have split or broke at some point, and that's what the shaking was. And when it did that, I started to fall. So, knowing I got tree roots on one side, a concrete block, and wooden steps, and a rake I'm holding, I throw the rake forward and I jump off the ladder. Now, I hit the ground, lay there for a second, pop back up, stand up. Somehow I get up, I stand up, I look at myself and got some dirt and stuff where I hit. I look at my arm. My left arm looks good. My right arm is dangling and it's tingling. And I went, oh shit, this ain't right. So I'm like, I'm feeling it's broken. Maybe my arm's dislocated. I can't tell. I yell, get to the house, yell at my wife. I said, you gotta take me to the hospital. I either broken my arm or dislocated my shoulder. I don't know what I did. Drive over there and get in the emergency room in Oxnard, and the nurses and all talking to me and everything like that. And they get me in a room and they're like, "Oh yeah, your arm's broken." And my wife's like, "Oh yeah, it's broken now. You can see." And right here on between my bicep and my tricep, my arm had swollen a little bit. You can see the bone protruding. Not it didn't break the skin, but it's poking through the skin. I mean, it's poking the skin out like a foot, like a baby foot for a pregnant woman. And yeah, yeah. So I had surgery on Friday. So that actually is speeding up the recovery because the other cast they had a soft cast on me, and the guy says, "Well, we can try it this way and give it, 4 or 5 weeks and see if it starts to heal." The problem with that cast, now they would have given me a better cast than what I had, and I had a soft cast. Every time I moved my arm or got up out of bed or anything, I could feel the bone pop out and pop back in. Oh, yeah, yeah. So I'm like, the whole time the doctor's telling me, it's like we if we if we do surgery, to go this way. If we don't do surgery, we have this, and then we have to see if it's healing. If it's not healing right, then we can do surgery. I'm like, okay, hold it, stop right there. You're doing surgery now. Well, we have to do, and I know by law they got to tell me all these things. I'm like, dude, you sold me. We're doing surgery. So I have a plate in my arm with like 5 or 6 screws that are holding these bones in place. But it has not been fun. Last week was a total blur, painful blur, and then I had the surgery on Friday. So anyway, welcome guys to Under the Dome. You now know what's going on with me. I'm your host, Alan Orick, one arm right now. I get the stitches out on the 13th. But in the meantime, I got my co-host Sean Williams, who got to hear most of this story while we were off air. How are you doing tonight, Sean?
Well, I'm, I don't have any stitches or splats or anything like that. So apparently my week went a little smoother than yours.
Uh, they gave me one of the things they did for me. Well, first off, let me tell the audience this story that I told you off the air. So I'm in the emergency room and I'm cracking jokes because what else are you going to do? They pump me with 2 vials of morphine, and then they do uh, some kind of like a Valium or something like that, some kind of liquid Valium, get me to relax because I'm tensing up every time they move, every time they touch me, and stuff like that. Well, because it's not your forearm, it's my humerus muscle. They're going to bring a portable X-ray machine in to take an X-ray, and they got 2 guys that are doing this, Mutt and Jeff. So Mutt and Jeff start moving my arm. They want to take this X-ray, take that X-ray. And he said, "Okay, so the next one we're going to extend your arm fully out, and we're going to stick it out straight, and we're going to take a picture." I said, "Not in this lifetime. Not this, no way, buddy. It ain't happening." And the guy's looking at me. My wife's like, "Yeah, they looked offended that you said that." I'm like, "Dude, you are not touching this arm, taking this arm like this." I said, "People in Colorado don't need to hear this level of profanity if you're going to extend my arm outward. I'm holding it tight up against my body like, I it's jelly, and I got to hold it in place." I said, "You are not doing this to me." So, but the first few pictures you took, you could see how it was broken. I mean, it was a clean break. The guy said it was like somebody just took the bone and just snapped it. And I'm like, well, that's pretty much what I did. I think when I jumped off, somehow instead of having my arm forward, it must have come back behind me when I hit the ground, and I landed first on my right arm and snapped it, and then fell on my left side. So I don't know. They kept saying, "Did you lose consciousness?" I'm like, "No, at no point did I lose consciousness." Because I hopped right up, um, and I looked at myself to see because I was worried I cut myself. That's what I was worried about. I didn't think I broke anything. So yeah, no, yeah, yeah. So all those stories that say about broken bones are true. You really don't feel it until you start moving that damn thing around. All you know is your arm is swinging, or your leg is swinging like it shouldn't swing.
Yeah, that's the way it was when I tore my rotator cuff. It was just hanging
hmm
there. I couldn't pick it up. I couldn't do anything except for just, and I was on my knees and dragging my arm. And I couldn't pick it up at all.
It's I don't know how. I now have new respect for players that can come back and play later on that season after breaking a bone. And we look at things like, oh, they're just going to be out 8 weeks. I tell you what, being out 8 weeks with a broken bone, any kind of bone, that's that. I don't know how you do it. I really don't. And especially a clean break like this one, it's it was not fun. That soft cast for 3 days, that Tuesday night, Wednesday, and Thursday, I didn't sleep. And then when they did the surgery, they stuck this thing in me that kills your nerve in your arm, your main nerve in your arm, and it's a literally it's a ball of pain medicine. And Friday, I didn't even feel my arm. I mean, it's just like it was so dead, you couldn't feel anything. Um, but Saturday and Sunday, as that ball kind of emptied out and wore down, then I started feeling stuff, and it was not fun pulling that thing out. I had my wife pull that. Poor thing. Neither one of us are medical people at all, and they're like, "Yeah, you just disconnect this tube that they got shoved between my clavicle and my shoulder, and it apparently ran in my body pretty far." And I remember them doing it, but I was like still on the anesthesia, like, "Yeah, look at that! Look at the ultrasound, cool." So yeah, not fun.
It's all fun and games until the feelings start.
That's right. That's right. And now I have the feeling I'm trying to. And you're right, Calvin. That's exactly what I'm thinking. My adrenaline must have been pumping so hard that I really didn't feel anything. That right after it happened, and it wasn't until later that night, that it really got to be painful. So, yeah, it has not been fun. Has not been fun.
Let me pay the bill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Welcome to the Under the Dome podcast and medical report.
Yeah.
We're sponsored by us. Anyway, thank you for joining us tonight. We really love you guys so much. You can subscribe to our show on iTunes and on YouTube, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and we'll give out that following information for Twitter at the end of the show. And personally, I want to thank everybody that joined me and Bob Rose last week for the Bayou Blitz. We had so much fun doing that. That's the first time in probably close to a year that I've been on there with him, and it's just amazing to me how far Bob's come, and I'm so proud of him. And thank you guys for supporting him as well as you give us. Like I say, we had a blast doing that show. We went about an hour and a half. Had a lot of fun. But anyway, tonight we cover cornerbacks.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, so the big thing that I brought up, and you can tell by the pictures we have in here on the show tonight. Okay, so you've got Eli Apple, who's going to be a free agent next year. Free agent in about 2 weeks. Janoris Jenkins, who we picked up from the Giants off of waivers, we own his $11,000 contract. So that's $11 million contract. That cap hit, we really don't need to hit take that big hit. So we have to make a decision with him as well. Are we going to keep him long term? And if we do, are we going to restructure this deal to free up some salary cap money? Lattimore is entering what, his fourth season, if I'm doing my numbers right.
I believe so, yeah.
2017 class, or yeah, he'll be entering his fourth season. So they have to make a decision on him sometime to decide if they're going to pick up that fifth year option as a first round draft pick. Plus, you've got PJ Williams and Patrick Robertson, who I believe Williams will be a free agent. Robertson, though, they probably going to part ways with. So there's a lot of transition in this position now.
Yeah.
You know, so this is a position that is very much in play, to me at least, very much in play for that first round pick, as well as activity in free agency, depending on what they decide to do with Jenkins, not Jenkins, I'm sorry, with, well, Robertson, but with, yeah, Jenkins and Apple. Are they going to bring both of them back? Are they only going to bring one of them back? Um, if not, where do they go from there? So I I can see this position being completely remade over the next two seasons.
Yeah. I personally, my read on things at this point in time, I feel like P Rob's gone.
Mhm.
Williams probably gone. Apple, they're going to have to seriously evaluate his performance. And I'm not saying that Apple is a bad player because we've seen him produce at a very high level, but we've
Mhm.
also seen him play like Billy G. Uh, they're going to have to do an evaluation on him. Now, I really, considering the way that Jenkins came in, and by that I mean in the middle of the season, you're already playing your schedule and you're trying to incorporate a new player into your system.
Mhm.
Taking all that into consideration, I think that Jenkins played very well for the Saints last year, and I would love to see them be able to retain him. Uh, I'm not so high. Uh, to me, it Apple left me with the impression last year that in the biggest games, in the most important situations, he came a lot.
Yeah.
You saw him in coverage, and he immediately did stupid things like pass interference, blatant pass interference when he didn't have to.
Mhm.
Pass interference when the play wasn't even to your side or your receiver. Uh, they call him for holding or pass interference when the play didn't even come to his side of the field.
Yeah.
Those are things that he's going to have to improve on if they decide to keep him on board.
Well, and I really think Apple's probably gone because I just don't see the Saints able to bring him back on a cheap contract. And that's the only way I can see him coming back. I felt last year he hit the skids at the worst possible time. About the middle of the season on, he really played badly. And you could see that, for example, in that 49ers game, he was just horrible.
Yeah,
And
that was the game that stood out to me as well.
yeah,
He was
and
exposed
yeah.
terribly against the 49ers.
Now, granted, he got hurt against Chicago. He got hurt in another game, I believe, as well. I don't remember which one it was, but the Chicago game is the one that stands out to me. And it seems like from that point on, he was never quite the same. But
As a matter of fact, if I'm not too terribly off base, him being injured versus Chicago was the impetus for us going out and getting Janoris Jenkins.
well, Jenkins got let go because he made a politically incorrect comment. I
Yeah,
think he used the word retard. And that's a word that they don't like using hearing anymore. But basically, I think he accused the media or someone being a retard, and then he tried to cover it up by saying, "Well, that's how we talk in the hood" or whatever. Um, and it's not going to play. It's just not going to play in today's world. Um, so I thought Jenkins played extremely well. I thought he was the best cornerback on the field against the Vikings, which was unfortunate because really needed elite level Lattimore in that game, and he didn't play that well. I thought he played very poorly in that Vikings game. Um, so Jenkins entices you a lot like how Apple did when Apple came on board last year because he played so much better than Ken Crawley, who was the starter in 2017 on that side opposite Lattimore.
Yeah. And didn't play bad.
Yeah.
But then Crawley imploded.
Yeah.
And Apple rose to the occasion.
Yep.
And then you get an off season. Apple implodes, and you got Jenkins. Now,
Yes.
if this pattern continues, I shudder to think what's going to happen to Jenkins.
Exactly. And this is the problem you have with Jenkins and his $11 million cap hit. He's got 1 year left in his deal. If you extend him, and you might get a break on his contract so you can sign more players. But what if he follows that same pattern and he implodes next season or the beginning of the following season? We don't know yet.
And if you're on the hook for $11 million,
yeah,
you're stuck.
Yeah.
You have absolutely no choice but to try to make the best of a really bad situation.
And you have to.
You didn't really have that with Crawley or Apple.
Right. Exactly. You had Apple was still playing on his rookie contract. They declined the 5th-year option, which was the big number this past season, and it's now going to work out looking like a very smart move by the Saints. Here's the issue now. Okay, so Lattimore, we're talking about not playing consistently well. You're going to have to make a decision whether you're going to pay him as well. So if you make the commitment and say, okay, we're going to sign Jenkins to a 3-year deal to spread out that $11 million cap hit. We'll give him a raise and everything else. We're going to make a commitment to him. You do that knowing that you're going to also have to make a decision on Lattimore, probably leaning on towards paying him. And if you pay him, that's a lot of money tied up in your 2 cornerbacks who should be your starters. What is that? What do you do now in free agency? What do you do now in the draft? And Calvin mentioned one of the players that I like a lot at 24, cornerback C.J. Henderson out of Florida. Somebody I think who will probably be there, and somebody I think the Saints ought to seriously look at drafting, because that ensures if, let's say, the worst happens and when this pattern continues, Jenkins ends up being a disaster next year, you can use that cheap rookie contract and bump him up to replace Jenkins. Maybe you don't eat as much. You structure the contract so you don't eat that much in dead money if you have to part ways with him or demote him to nickelback. So that's all things to think about. And in the meantime, you've got Patrick Robertson and PJ Williams, who are your nickel and dime backs. What do you do with those two? Because you're still going to need depth. So now you're starting to look at other corners, maybe in the draft, maybe in free agency. So it's possible that we could be looking at 2 or 3 different corners being added to this roster.
I fully expect us to draft him. Now, I don't, and I very could easily be wrong with this. Mm-hmm. I don't see us going quarterback at 24. But I mean, I didn't see us going quarterback into Lattimore.
Right, and it depends on how the draft falls. I mean,
Yeah.
if I read something the other day that Ruggs may be there at 24, well, from Alabama, the receiver. Well, if he's
Yeah.
there, or if he is getting close to 24, I'm seriously thinking about going up to go get him or taking him at 24 regardless. I mean, that's one of the elite receivers of the draft class. But,
Yeah.
if we're looking at, okay, all the top, let's say the top four receivers are off the board, and that would be Judy, um, Ruggs, shoot, I just had them all. CD, Lamb, and let's say Chenault.
From Colorado.
Yeah,
I can't remember
Chenault.
his name.
Chenault.
Yes,
Let's yeah,
and
let's
his
say.
stock is more than likely going to drop because of the injury.
Well,
Yeah.
and Chenault's somebody who's probably going to be there at 24. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, all four are gone. So you're now looking at 5 through 7. So that now is like T. Harris from Clemson, uh, Justin Jefferson, LSU. Those kind of guys probably are going to be in that range. There'll be a lot of pressure from Saints fans. Oh, you guys hate Jefferson. I'm already seeing this crap on social media. But you guys hate Jefferson. Guys hate Jefferson. But if you're now looking at a cornerback like C.J. Henderson, who's going to be there, Henderson makes more sense there because of the things we just spent the first 10 minutes talking about. You know, the lack of depth you're going to have at a cornerback position and money you're probably going to allocate towards your two starters out there. You don't want to go and get, let's just say for the sake of argument, they want to get um, the top nickelback out there. Well, the top nickelback is the kid out of Denver, Chris Harris. Okay, um, you know, I don't think he's a starting cornerback, but he's one of the best nickelbacks out there. That's a lot of money now to allocate towards your defensive back. A first round draft pick who could possibly slide as a number two guy, if not challenging your number one guy in Lattimore, makes a lot more sense there than going to sign a guy like Chris Harris or bringing in a Byron Jones, a Logan Ryan, James Bradbury from Carolina, one of those guys. You don't really want to have to spend that kind of money because that's eating up a lot of your cap space in a position where you really need your depth to come from the draft or cheap contracts. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the one thing that keeps coming up in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
You hear that once you hear that Breeze is coming back.
Yep.
You hear that terminology that I so despise. All in for this season. All in for this season.
Yeah.
Now, exactly what kind of mindset is that going to set forth with the organization? Are we really and truly going to be so dead set on quote unquote this season that we say to hell with the future? It all matters now. Now, is that the way that we're going to approach free agency? Is that the way that we're going to approach the draft? I mean,
I honestly don't think they will because I think they realized in the long run that doesn't work out because if you don't make it, now you got big contracts that you're going to have to eat.
Now you're Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, no first round draft pick for the next 5 years. I mean, yeah, you can't be in that position. You are playing that you only live once kind of attitude. You're probably going to sign an expensive guard. You're probably going to sign an expensive linebacker. Okay. But I would not be surprised. I know people are going to lose their mind over this, but I would not be surprised to see the Saints restructure Jenkins as your starter, pay Lattimore for his 5th year option, to buy themselves some time, draft a guy like C.J. Henderson, and there's some other players. It's not just Henderson. Henderson is just my top cornerback who will be available in that spot. But if you wanted to look at other corners, um, there's a kid from Ohio State. Um, he's really, I mean, I'll be surprised if he slides this far. But Jeff, I'm gonna butcher this poor dude's name. Okudea, Okudah. I know I've heard it, but I'm just butchering his name. What is it? Okudah. Thank you, Okudah.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, the LSU token LSU prospect, Kristen Fulton, Trevon Diggs from Alabama, C.J. Henderson, and then Bryce Hall from Virginia. That's probably your top 5 corners. And honestly, I expect Fulton, Diggs, Henderson, and Hall probably to be there at 24. There's another kid, Damian Arnett, who is probably a low second, high third round pick. Um, that's a possibility as well. So there's some Ohio State players out there, but I honestly think that C.J. Henderson is probably going to be the best option for the Saints at this point at 24, unless a really top high talent player slides for whatever reason. And that's kind of where I've been going back and forth with receivers and corners as in that 24th spot. I'm pretty much in the cornerback side now. Then I think they're going to take a corner at 24. I just don't know who it's going to be yet.
Let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
You are Jeff Ireland or Mickey Loomis, probably closer in this instance to Jeff Ireland.
Okay.
What's your evaluation thus far on Marshorn Lattimore?
Frustratingly inconsistent. He has stretches, because it's not just flashes, it's stretches, where he is an elite cornerback, an elite shutdown cornerback. You can match him up against whoever is the best receiver on that side, and he takes him out of the game. But there are too many games where he does not play to his capability. I don't know if he gets bored. I don't know if he gets lazy, loses focus. I don't know what it is. But there are games where he does not come in and he plays more like an average cornerback and gives up receptions he really has no business giving up. Every cornerback's going to give up a reception. I don't care who it is. But there are some games where Lattimore is getting beat by guys on routes and patterns he has no business getting beat on. These are things he should be feasting on, And I think some coaches feel like, let's challenge him. Let's go at him and see which Lattimore shows up for this game. And that's what's frustrating, because you have to make a decision whether you're going to pay this man.
Yeah.
Because he has the ability, and we've seen it, to be an elite shutdown cornerback, the kind of cornerback who you win championships with.
The kind of cornerback that gets defensive rookie of the year.
Yeah.
That's the player that we need.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think you described it perfectly. Frustratingly inconsistent. You saw him in that Seattle game.
Mm-hmm.
Almost a flawless performance. And
Yep.
I forget who it was the following week, but the same thing. And then you see the game that he put up against Minnesota, where he looked like a fifth-round draft pick rookie.
Yeah, exactly. Making boneheaded mistakes, and he does get hurt, but that happens. My main thing is I get frustrated with his inconsistency, but Calvin brought up a point I've been thinking about as well. If you draft Henderson, you could potentially use him to replace Lattimore. And now you don't have to necessarily pay Lattimore. If you like Henderson and Henderson shows much more consistency than Lattimore has, you may not have to eat that contract. Now you got a rookie contract again, and you can go draft another cornerback, um, and just let Lattimore go on his way if Henderson turns out to be the player that we all expected Lattimore to be. So
I
again,
don't think it's to that point yet.
well,
But I mean, if the trend continues, and see, that's what all of these negotiations and evaluate, that's what they're based on.
yeah,
The trends that these guys show. And the trend for Lattimore is he tends, and I say this in all fairness, based on some of the things that I've heard in interviews, some of the things that I've heard that he said.
mhm,
Um, Lattimore almost approaches it like he can flip the switch whenever he gets ready to, or whenever he needs to,
yep,
and it's going to be there. And
yep.
it's not like that.
You cannot play that way. You've got, and that's the frustrating thing because it's really an attitude. It's not the ability; it's the attitude.
I remember
You've got to
after
bring
the
it every
Rams
week.
game this year, the game where Breeze got
Yeah.
hurt, and we were just completely blown out.
Mhm.
The entire Sunday was discombobulated. Breeze went out in the second drive, I believe. And in an interview after that game, he said that he made a comment, something, I'm paraphrasing here, something to the effect of he's going to have to learn to be prepared more than he is. And I'm like, seriously?
Well, yeah, he's got to realize that every week is another challenge. Just because on paper this receiving core doesn't look good, you shouldn't let some bullshit receiver uh, get 100 yards on you because you shut down Julio Jones last week, or you shut down, I don't know, pick your top receiver of the NFL right now. You shut him down for a week. Now you're letting, um, oh, I'm drawing a blank on some of the receivers' names right now, but now you're letting, I don't know, a Cardinals receiver beat you, or a Lions receiver. You're letting Callaway beat you right now.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I do like that receiver, but still, you're letting somebody like that beat you. Yeah, so that's why I think if you bring in Henderson, I think you can put pressure on Lattimore. Lattimore can now look at this guy as, is this guy coming to take my job? Is he going to push me out the door? Is he going to make me play more consistently? Because that's to really answer your question. Do you go all in for next year? If you want to go all in for next year, then you're trading up to go get that top receiver, and you're going to spend big money on a guard, on a corner, a linebacker. You're going to fill in those. You're going to spend big money on the receivers. You're going all in to fill in the holes that you think you need to fill in. That are the difference between you losing to Minnesota in the wild card round or going to a championship game. And I don't think that's how they're going to look at it. I think they're going to look at the draft. But yeah, we need to fill holes, but we're also going to make plans for how we're going to manage the salary cap post Drew Brees, and when we have to start paying these good draft classes in 2016, 2017, 2018.
Well, I think that there's a misconception that the Saints are further away from being quote unquote that team. Uh, they're not one of those teams that's like half a dozen players away from being a championship caliber
Yeah.
championship caliber team. Uh, you're talking about two to three major holes to fill, but they're a lot closer than what a lot of people are giving credit.
Yeah. And they are. I mean, you don't win 13 games back-to-back years, 3 division titles, 3 consecutive trips to the playoffs, and really 2018 still is there. You're a missed call away from the Super Bowl that year. You don't do all that if you're a half dozen or a dozen so players away from really winning it all. You just right now, it's about luck, getting the breaks. If you get certain breaks, you're maybe not playing the wild card round and your team has a week to get healthy and you're hosting a divisional round game instead. Maybe they come out better focused. I don't know. We've talked about that kind of stuff before, but I think some of these kids that, with people pushing out the door, like PJ Williams, has a good chance of coming back only because they're going to be cheap. I don't think they're going to. PJ Williams has shown he's capable of playing the nickel and short, within 5-10 yards from the line of scrimmage kind of coverage. He gets beat whenever somebody goes past him. But he's also a good tackler too. So, there are some positives to bring him back that you could upgrade from him, but how much money do you really want to spend on that position to upgrade from him? Um, so I think someone like him may come back. I still don't think Andrus Pete is completely out of the picture. There are people who are ready to, push him out the door and never come back, but I don't think he gets the money he's looking for. And I think the Saints, unless the market stays where the Saints want to pay somebody, I don't think the Saints will have the money to draft or bring in, I shouldn't say draft, but don't have the money to bring in an expensive guard. Just
I,
because I think Drew Brees' contract, some of the money they're going to spend elsewhere, they don't want to pay a $40 million contract to a guard. I just don't see it happen.
well, Bob and I discussed this the other night on the Andre Speak. It's hard to get a bearing on it because Andre Speak has become the latest Tremont Armstead. You get into the fifth week of the season, and okay, which one of them is going to be hurt?
Yeah,
Then you get to the 10th week of the season, and it's oh my god, I hope they're not both hurt.
yeah.
But Andrew Speed is still one of the most versatile linemen that we have.
And here's the thing: maybe you can get him cheaply, and you can go draft a third tackle in that third round pick or fourth round pick. An offensive tackle who will be your third tackle on the roster. Somebody could possibly replace Armstead at some point, but may also play guard for you at some point. And so you've got now you might want to bring in, excuse me, Pete, because now you've got Pete as starter slash depth competing with a fourth round pick who could be starter slash depth. At worst, he's your third tackle. At best, maybe he's your starting guard, and then slides over to tackle later on. Again, you've got to think about the future. How are you going to replace Armstead in the future? Um, how are you going to pay Ryan Ramczyk in the future? Those kind of decisions. And I'm not saying the guy that you draft to in this draft class is your future, but he is somebody who has the potential to be your future. So that again, that's the job. That's why you make the decisions in the draft. You're looking at players who are going to fit your program, and you're looking at long-term solutions because you can use that cheap contract. Um, we don't know. I do think the Saints spend some money in free agency, but I don't know where they're going to spend that money at. I just
With Breeze deciding to come back, and I've said this for the past couple of weeks, I do expect them to be more aggressive in free agency than they normally have been.
Yeah,
Now, just exactly how aggressive it's yet to be seen.
right. It depends on what happens to Breeze's contract. That's the number one thing. That's the very first thing they have to fix. How much they're going to pay Breeze for how long? Um, I go back to Marcus Mariota. I think he's a possibility. As far as receivers, and we're about 3 weeks from well, now 2 weeks from that. Free agency starts what, the 17th. Um,
15th.
what's that?
15th.
15th. Okay. So, I think they look hard at receivers, slot receivers. I don't think they look hard at number two guys. I think they look at a slot receiver right now. I think that number two guy is going to come in the draft. I really do.
Yeah.
It's a deep enough draft class. I think that's where they're going to find that speedster. Okay. Um, so now you're looking at receiver, you're looking at guard, you're looking at possible defensive tackle because you don't know what's going to happen on Yamada. That's what we talked about a few weeks ago. Definitely linebacker. I just saw a story. Jamie Collins from the Patriots, former Brown, former Patriot, is a possibility. I would like to see somebody like a Collins playing alongside Dominic Davis. I mean, Demario Davis, not Dominic Davis. Sorry. Don't ask me where that came from. Demario Davis, because we've already talked about it. I think AJ Klein is a declining player now.
Well,
And
AJ Klein is in the same, to me anyway, but in my opinion, in the same category with your Armstead, with your Feats, with there too, and some
yeah,
outstanding difference maker players when they're on the field, but their consistency with staying on the field is just not where it needs to be.
right, right. And you need a couple linebackers. So linebacker once again is a possibility in the draft as well as free agency. And now looking at corners, and then we haven't touched on it yet, but next week we talk about safeties. And Von Bell is a free agent, and
Yeah,
he's probably one of your best safeties on the roster right now. So you're going to want to bring him back. How much are you
yeah.
going to pay him? Um, I think, and this is what we'll talk about next week, but I think Marcus Williams is going to make it a break it year for him. He has played well in spurts, but he's made some mistakes, and his mistakes have been very, very, very costly. Um,
He has been in my opinion, he has been in a steady, although slow, not a steep decline, but a steady decline ever since Minneapolis.
well, but the problem is statistically, he's been one of the best safeties the Saints have ever had. Unfortunately, except for the interceptions, as far as being in position and making tackles, he's been good,
Yeah,
but he's not a playmaker. He has not been a playmaker since his rookie year, and it seems like that mistake he made in the Minnesota game, he's never really gotten completely over. And you see that again and again and again. Then you have a kid come along like, and again, we'll talk about this, next week, but the kid from Florida last year, um,
Chauncey.
yeah, I was just getting ready to do his initials, but yeah, Chauncey Gardner Johnson, you know, playing with much more of a fearless, reckless attitude. So, you know, I think he has a good possibility of pushing Williams out of a starting spot if he doesn't take Von Bell's job next season because we don't pay him. So that again, those are decisions that the team has to make. Um, that's going to be pretty hard to go back and win another 13 games and division title and get back to the playoffs and trying to advance in the playoffs because this roster has a lot more turnover than the
Yeah,
previous two seasons. But drafting well and making good decisions in our free agency, we have the ability to repeat all those steps because I don't see Carolina, I don't see Atlanta, and who knows what you can get out of Tampa Bay. I read a story today that Tampa allegedly is really interested in Teddy Bridgewater. Um, we don't know what's going to happen with those three teams. So
Yeah.
we are still in the driver's seat until we show we aren't capable of it anymore.
Well, with Carolina, you've got an absolute reboot, I believe.
Yeah,
And Atlanta, unless I miss my guess, Atlanta will be firing Dan Quinn before the halfway point of the season next year, unless they come out and set the world on fire.
they've got to fundamentally change some of their philosophies.
Yeah.
And part of that is we have to see what they're going to do for a running attack because if they try and run that same undersized defense and just try and outscore people, yeah, Dan Quinn will be looking for a job by the midway point of the season. Um,
Oh, I fully expect
yeah, yeah, they need to. They've drafted heavily in our offensive line, and I don't think that offensive line's any better, even when the guys were healthy. So yeah, they've got some issues in there.
that.
um, but so that's I guess that's my take on the cornerback position right now, and I'm really curious now to see what how this plan unfolds for the Saints because this is definitely a case of free agency's got to fill some holes, and free agency will be determined based on how much money they want to spend keeping the guys they have. And I think the draft is going to be, on the one hand, sorry guys, I had to readjust my sling here. Um, the draft's going to be on the one hand filling some holes, but on the other hand, it's going to be building for the future because they're going to make decisions on the 2017 and 2018 draft classes, who they're going to pay and who they're not going to pay.
Yeah.
Um, don't yeah, we kind of skipped over this, but Calvin mentioned it at one point. An elite defensive tackle. Um, you know, is are they going to keep Sheldon Rankins? I think they do. I think they they have seen enough of Sheldon Rankins that they like what they see out of him. They want him to grow and develop. Um, the question is, can he stay healthy? He needs to stay healthy. If he can't stay healthy next year, maybe they need to start looking somewhere else for a defensive tackle, and it's time to move on from Rankins.
Yeah.
So
Um,
again, that
I,
throws that in there.
I, I'm kind of torn on that because, I mean, as you were saying a while ago, you've only got X amount of money that you can break up into all these different position
Yep.
groupings. And you've got, as far as defensive linemen go, you've got Cam Jordan, you've
Mm,
got Davenport, you've got Rankins, you've got
Malcolm
uh,
Brown.
Malcolm Butler,
Malcolm Brown.
Malcolm Brown, I'm sorry. Um, you've got all these guys. Are you really going to go after spending more money on more of those guys?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you know, that's why Davenport has to work out, and I think he has potential to be a great player for us. Of course, they love what they got out of Cameron Jordan, so they need to see if Rankins can be that defensive tackle, that elite defensive tackle they thought they were drafting, um, and show that same consistency because we have seen it. He just needs to stay healthy. You definitely saw a change in the strength and how good that defensive line was once Rankins was hurt again. You
Yeah,
know, I definitely saw it, especially against the run. Um, his lateral pursuit is elite level, and him being injured, guys are able to break outside. You know, they could because you didn't have Rankins running them down.
yeah.
So yeah. So it's I know they've got a plan. And this is the good news with a guy like Loomis. Loomis gets a lot of flack from people, but they put together a plan of things they want to do, and they're generally successful in executing that plan. The only question we have is, do they get priced out of the market? That's my only question. That happened last year. They wanted Adam Humphries. He got paid a hell of a lot more than what the Saints were willing to pay him, and I thought that hurt us last year. We really can't afford to just try and make do. We really need to get upgrades in talent, but they have to fit under the cap.
Yeah.
I don't know, Chad. I'm reading your comments, Chad. I don't know. I think Armstead does have to restructure, but I don't think you can move him yet. I think you can, if you can't get him to restructure, then you definitely are taking a tackle, probably in the third round. Um, and that kid is going to have to be a third tackle now with the intentions of moving him to left tackle um, next season. I think that's you can't afford to move Armstead this year because you really have nothing to replace him with.
No.
You're not going to flip Ramczyk to the other side. It's just it's
That creates more of a problem than it solves.
yes. It's a lot better because Armstead's an elite tackle when he's healthy, but he just can't stay healthy. He never has. And it's the same thing. And I see what you're saying, Anna. It's the same thing with Pete. Pete can't stay healthy either. The problem is Pete's not an elite guard when he is healthy. He's just a very good guard when he's healthy, but he doesn't stay healthy. And once he gets nicked up, he degenerates quickly. Um, Armstead's elite. He just can't stay healthy. He will miss at least one, if not two games, and it's a domino effect on that offensive line once he's gone. Um, yeah, you know, offensive linemen are never sexy, but everybody wants an elite offensive line. So
Yeah. Everybody wants Dallas's offensive line, but they don't want to
they don't
see
want
it
to
coming
draft. They
through.
don't want to draft it. They don't want to draft it. They just want it to show up.
Yeah.
And I believe too. I think Chauncey Gardner Johnson is going to be a starter with somebody next year. I don't know where. Um, I'd like to bring Von Bell back, so I don't want him to replace Von Bell, but I would not be disappointed slash upset if he replaces Marcus Williams and Marcus Williams becomes more of that roaming cornerback, defensive back, cornerback slash linebacker slash safety hybrid kind of guy. I would not be opposed to that.
Yeah. I agree.
Um, any other final words, Sean? Anything that you want to look for?
Um, no, not really. I think we covered just about everything tonight. I would like, still, uh, every time that we break down a different position on
Mhm.
here, it becomes increasingly, I become increasingly aware of where the weak spots were a year ago. And it seems like every time we cover a new position, I realize that maybe they weren't as good last year as I thought they were.
Here's the reality. Every team has weak spots. I don't care who, even Kansas City, who won the Super Bowl. Even the 49ers, who I thought were strong in the front seven, they were weak on the back end. That's why Drew was able to strafe them for 5 touchdown passes. Um, I thought all their strength was in their front seven. So, we have weaknesses. And if you look at the losses that we had last season, counting the playoff game, those weaknesses were exposed in every single one of those losses. Lack of depth at wide receiver, um, struggling on the offensive line, injuries at the linebacker and defensive line, and inconsistent play at cornerback. I found those were the positions where that's where we lost games because of those positions. So, you know, and they know it too. They know it too.
Yeah. I just, I've said this so many times since that day. It was just disheartening to, and I may be completely off base with this observation, but it was absolutely disheartening to see the level of effort that they seemingly put forth in that Minnesota playoff game. It looked like they nailed it.
Yeah.
And every bad thing that could happen did. Every weakness that could possibly be exposed and exploited was. And the bad thing about it was, from about halftime on, you saw it coming. You knew how it was going to end. And there was absolutely nothing you could do to stop it.
Well, yeah. Like my wife always says, it gets more frustrating because you're mentally prepared when they come out and play badly. You're mentally prepared for them to lose, but then Drew starts coming back and they start making plays. Now they're giving you hope. And that's that's what hurts the most because you have hope that okay, they're close to winning this ball game. And this is why people wanted to bench or let Drew Brees go and start um, um, Taysom Hill because Taysom Hill played his soul out, his heart and soul out in that game. But when Brees takes that last sack fumble, that really killed all the momentum. It looks like they're about to score and take the lead, and but that's not Brees' fault. It's the offensive line's fault not blocking, which they had not were not doing most of the game. We were just Taysom Hill, especially, was willing that team to win because the offensive line doesn't block. Fine, I'll carry these three guys for the yardage I need to get a first